What is up, all you beautiful people? It is I, AkemiTCG, back with the brand new video. I recently did a video on the best decks in this format. Completely subjective and also actually pretty objective too, because if you haven't watched it, basically, just take a look at it. Now we are back with the best hand traps in this current format. This current format is dominated by pretty much Dryton, VWs, and especially Tri-Brigades. You have to be very, very careful against these particular decks. And if you're not prepared for them with the right hand traps, either in your main deck or your side deck, you're going to get absolutely annihilated. No questions asked. So now, I'm going to talk about which one of these hand traps are pretty much the best ones you should be main decking / side decking, and which ones are absolute garbage trash tier. Let's get to it. First, we have Nibiru, the primal being. So Nibiru, it's relatively good against Tri-Brigade if they don't have an extender to make Appaloosa first before 5. In Dryton, if they already have a negate up before 5, it's already over for you in terms of Nibiru. With Striker, occasionally it comes up, but it's kind of rare for Striker unless they're extending with Access Code Talker. But with Salamangreats, it has a ton of application. So where do I put this at? I put this specifically at B tier. And why do I put this at B tier? It does have application against some of the best decks in the format right now. However, a lot of decks are just able to inherently play around Nibiru. They can just summon less than 5 and on a kind of okay board and still have some back row. It's pretty bad against control-based decks, and control-based decks are really, really good right now as well. That's why I put it at the B tier, just because it's not always applicable. You can't always use Nibiru. You draw into it. If you don't have a way to get rid of it in your hand, sometimes it's dead in some matchups. So that is why I put it in the B tier. With Infinite Impermanence is a very, very, very strong card right now. The only downside to it is it really doesn't do much against VW or Dryton. I mean, you can Infinite Impermanence the Shen, so your stuff doesn't get banished. And against Dryton, you can just use it straight up to just bait out a negate from Ultimateness. But other than that, it's really, really good against Rogue. You can still use it against Fiber plays. I can't think of a Rogue deck that doesn't lose the Imperm besides, like, I guess, like maybe Numeron Turbo. But if you're playing against Numeron Turbo and you're going first and they're going second, you're probably going to lose anyways. So that's why I'm going to put this specifically at the B tier. Doesn't have the most application. It's pretty good, but in my opinion, it just doesn't have the most application. Specifically when some decks it just doesn't work against. Straight up, it's just not good against certain decks. Ash Blossom Joy Spring. Before in the past, I would put this at S tier, but I would put this at A tier at this point. It doesn't really stop, like single-handedly stop any of the top meta decks unless you use it like wickedly. And most of the time I see myself just using Ash against Extravagance. Occasionally Prosperity, depending on whether or not it's game 1, 2, or 3. Game 2 and 3, when they're digging for cards, when they're digging for 6, that's when I Ash them. But if they're playing Prosperity and it's blind, I don't know what deck they're playing, I probably won't Ash them. However, I just feel that Droll is so much better than Ash right now in terms of playability. Droll just stops many more regular decks and also many rogue decks as well. So that's why I put Ash at the A tier. Next, we have Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. I can stop a card in the extra deck, but what do you put in it? You put in Kagari, you put in Shen, you could put in Shen. I'm trying to think of any other cards you can use. Mu Beta Fafnir, maybe the Link 2 that searches, maybe Shurag. But you just have to put in a lot of commitment when you play Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. If your deck can handle it, yeah, sure, right? You can just stuff everything in your extra deck as you want just to counter your opponent's plays. But in actuality, a lot of decks just don't have space in their extra deck if you want to play them to the optimal level. So that's why I'm putting Ghost Reaper at C tier. It can pop off, so it's not completely bad, but it's just, I don't feel it popping off anytime soon. I could be wrong, but that's where I put it at. Dark Honest, just I think regular Honest is just better. Dark Honest is just okay. That's about it. Hold up, I didn't tell you guys this. AkemiTCG.com is now a thing. If you want to support the hashtag Umbrella Gang, you want to get your custom AkemiTCG exclusive field centers. It is my artwork. If you want this field center, go on this website down below. Spice up your Rika deck today. DD Crow is really, really good right now. I will put it specifically at the A tier if they are going with the ruling where if cards are moved from the place where they're meant to be triggered, then they will not trigger. For example, if you're using Ben 10 for cost, you can DD Crow the Ben 10 and then Ben 10 won't trigger. But it really depends on what region you're using. DD Crow is just really, really strong too, because you can also, the Kagari, get the engage back against some Salamangreats. It works as well. I don't know the matchup that well, but I'm pretty sure DD Crow works really well against certain parts of that combo. With Tri Brigade, if they don't have enough resources in the graveyard, you can also DD Crow that as well. So there's something to think about, and it's also not limited to a hard once per turn, and it's also a level 1 wing beast, so if you're playing Bird Up, you can just search it as well, which is pretty dope. Delta, I just don't see application with Delta, but to negate a spell, it's not bad if you control no cards. It's not bad at all. Definitely has some application, but it's not the worst. Bottom of the barrel D tier. Next is Joel and Lockbird. This is the first one I'm going to put at the S tier. It just stops pretty much every single top deck in the format right now. It stops Tri Brigades. Well, it doesn't really stop it completely. Lancia does that. Doesn't really stop it completely, but they lose out on a lot of searches, especially if they just open Tenki, you just draw them and they don't have Gamma. They lose out on a lot of searches, so they can't search their Revolt unless they hard drew it. Against, obviously against Dryton, it gets wrecked by it, and some rogue decks just lose to it flat out too. So it's a really, really strong blowout card, especially against heroes. If you happen to play against that one hero guy at your locals, Drone Lockbird is your best bet to defeating him, and I feel that Drone Lockbird should be a main deck card right now. Staple. Battle Fader stalls for one turn, one battle phase, that's it. If they have a negate, they're probably going to use it if they're going for game anyways, so that's why I put it at D tier. Gamma is extremely powerful right now. It's going to go into A tier. If you're getting your searches, it's free. You use Gamma, go into Omega, rip a card. So basically, you punish your opponent for playing Ash, and you also get the rip a card out of your opponent's hand because you can sync her for Omega, or pretty much an 8. It's a free 8. So Gamma is just really, really strong right now. Especially if you're playing against Dino, be really careful. They can just dump Misk and use Mist banners, force out the Ash, so they can just Gamma you and still pop up with the Mist. Be very, very careful with that. Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, very good right now. This is single-handedly one of, I think it's actually the only hand trap that stops Revolt. Like straight up, the only hand trap that stops Revolt. You can hit extenders too, like Monster Reborn, etc. And it's just a really good card right now. So it's the same tier as DD Crow. They do slightly different things, but still in the same tier. Ghost Ogre, I think, is simply just okay right now. And that's about it with the Ghost Ogre. I can't think of any any meta deck that straight up loses the Ghost Ogre at a certain point. If it comes up in your head in the comments, please let me know down below. No material, I just think there's better hand traps than no material right now. Not much to say about that. Same with Gores. You have to control no cards to pop up with Gores, and most of the time when you're playing in the Yugioh meta right now, especially if you're brand new to Yugioh and you're watching this, it's just not nearly as good as Gores used to be. There's just so many interrupts, so many negates, so many disruptions that even summoning that Gores with a big token is just not enough. At least not nowadays. Honest, I would put Honest, actually yeah, it'd be in the same tier as Dark Honest. It's rogue, it's niche, but it's so funny when it goes off. So we'll put Honest there, but I'm gonna put Honest as better than Dark Honest though. I just want to make that crystal clear. The regular Honest is just better than Dark Honest, because Honest can keep pumping, but Dark Honest just reduces their attack. Lancia is extremely powerful right now. Put this at the S tier, just because the moment they summon Karas or one of the Tri Brigades, you can just drop Lancia and they can't really do much. They have to banish the Tri Brigade card. They don't have to be Tri Brigade monsters, just the same typing to pop off. If they can't do that, then they don't have any plays, so Lancia just stops them for the turn. Same against Dinos, you can drop the Lancia when they pitch the miss. I know I'm talking about Dinos a lot just because I just have a lot of matchup with them. I know they're not running around that much, but Lancia does get the job done. Miradora, I just don't see much application for Miradora, but I can see it being used definitely more than all these 5 cards in D tier. So I'll put that one there. Red Blossoms, I haven't seen people successfully play this card, so I'm going to put this at D tier. Dimension Shifter is an extremely powerful hand trap that if your deck is able to play it without losing synergy, I highly recommend playing it. It stops literally almost every tier 1 and also every tier 2 deck. It's such a strong card. It's overwhelmingly powerful, and I highly recommend it. Skull Meister, same idea as Gold Spell DD Crow. They're all in the same family of cards that work with stuff in the graveyard, so that's why I put that at A tier. Ghost Sister Spooky Dogwood does have application. Remember, if you are going to game 3 and you're going second, you can just drop this bad boy if they start special summoning, and if they call time, you got it, if they can't burn you for enough damage. So it's definitely really good. It will stop many opponents in their tracks because it's not like a full-on max C challenge, but you gain a lot of life points the more your opponent special summons. So I can definitely see it being used, but just not nearly as much as every other one on this list. Valor is really good right now. I put Impermanent Valor both in the same tier for this time, just because you have to be careful of VW and Dryton, especially since you can't even activate Valor on your turn. However, it is a spellcaster tuner, which is essential for the Selene plays if you're not running Droll instead. So that's something to think about. But this is also a tuner in itself, so you can go for needle fiber plays, summon the Valor, and then just pop up that way. But it just doesn't work well against certain decks, and those certain decks are on the top of the food chain right now. So you have to be really careful of your main deck in this card. It could be dead in the hand, but it really just depends on what build you're running. Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. Hallelujah, the Grand Radiance. Okay. First time I read this card, I'm like, wait, what? It's just not the best card right now in this format, but I honestly feel at some point in time, in some legacy, some different dimension far away, Hallelujah could be a good card. I'll put that there. Ghost Mourner in Moonlight Chill is the last one. It has less application than Imperm Valor in Nibiru, but it doesn't have no application, so that is why I put this at C tier. People do forget that you can activate it on your turn, and it also burns for damage, so that's something to keep in mind, and it could be strong when used properly. And with anything with burn damage or gaining life points, life point augmentation, you always have to consider the time rules. And with the time rules, these cards could be very effective in the hands of the right situation. The question you have to think about is, how often does a situation come up? How often am I going to get to that point in time where I only have 1 minute left in the clock? If you're playing heavy control, or just both of you just grinding it out, it could come up, but you have to think about how often you would side these cards in. Anyways, that is all I have for the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Please leave your comments on how you feel about this particular list down below. I am AkemiTCG. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
The world ends now.